How's everyone doing today? It's your boy JJ Domination, and I just want to give you guys a quick update before I get into the topic of today's video. Of course, you can see I am using the Seattle Seahawks in a little practice mode video. That's who we'll be talking about, by the way. But a quick announcement, man. This video will be going up probably on Sunday or Monday. By then it'll be pretty soon to where I have Madden 20 in my hands, and this won't be the last Madden 19 video that comes out. I do have a couple of pre-recorded ones. I probably will just end up redoing them, but this is most likely probably going to be the last Madden 19 video. Now that I think about it, I'll probably just re-record the other ones on Madden 20, just so that way you guys don't have to see Madden 19 gameplay heading into Madden 20 season. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right into the topic. As you see, like I said, I am playing with the Seattle Seahawks in practice, just in my own little element. But I have an interesting topic or discussion that I want to gauge with you guys right here. Of course, you can tell me in the comment section if you agree or disagree, or if you have other alternative answers. But I was really doing some thinking, man, and I've been watching football for a long time, since I was about 3 years old. Of course, I really started getting to the game when I was able to really understand things around like the 3rd grade. Really started getting the football a lot more, and I've just been a fan of the Packers for a long time. It's not really about the Packers. I'm just, for people that are new and existing subscribers, just constantly reminding you guys I'm a Green Bay fan. But we are playing with the Seattle Seahawks, and I started thinking in my mind, what teams have influenced today's NFL, like the modern NFL, the way of thinking in the NFL, the way that you build teams, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. And the only team I could really think of that have been this influential, the Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks, which, by the way, this will be the first official season that none of those Legion of Boom players in the secondary will be here. So it is going to be a new era in Seattle. Man, I hated them so much when they played Green Bay, but it was hard not to acknowledge how great of a unit they were and how they had to basically command your respect because of the way that they played. But I was just thinking about it, man, and the Seattle Seahawks, the Legion of Boom defense has definitely influenced modern NFL defenses, and it's just wild to think about. And I'll be glad to give you guys a couple of examples, because I know right now it sounds kind of crazy, like, yeah, right, okay, JJ, we get it, they were a really good defense, but what exactly did they influence? Well, I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios. Hopefully they make sense to you, because I do understand that right now, before actually knowing any further detail, it kind of doesn't make sense. But let's just go ahead and begin. So, of course, on the defensive line, 2 of their main players on that defensive line were Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill. Now, Cliff Averill was more of the speed rushing type, really one with finesse moves and that nice rip that he had on those offensive tackles. And Michael Bennett was kind of like a 270-pound beast, who played a little bit of defensive tackle as well on 3rd downs. And, of course, if you guys don't know, Michael Bennett actually started his career in Tampa Bay before heading to Seattle. And then he played a little bit in Philadelphia. Now he's with the New England Patriots. Just giving y'all a little history lesson on Michael Bennett. But you look at Michael Bennett, he's like a 270-plus pounder. Traditionally undersized for a interior defensive lineman, but I think what helps him out is, number one, him being more athletic than those offensive guards, and number 2, having the pass rushing versatility and the moves and the quick burst to get behind the line of scrimmage and disrupt plays very quickly, even if he's not the one finishing the play. And to me, you look at how Michael Bennett is a 270-pounder playing on the interior of the defensive line. When you really take a step back and think about it, there are a lot of defenses today who will take their defensive ends, the ones that are quote-unquote oversized, and on pass rushing downs and passing downs in general, typically your third downs, plug them in traditionally where the defensive tackles will be. And I keep saying traditionally because there's a lot of things in the NFL that, were once traditional. Now we're in this new age where, for defensive linemen, it's kind of positionless, but not really. You look for guys that are versatile. For me, versatility is a good thing. It's not a bad thing whatsoever. For you to be good at a lot of different things means that I can put you in different situations to be successful. So if you look across the league, especially in hybrid defenses, they like to implement those oversized defensive ends and plug them in at defensive tackle. The Patriots do it. The Detroit Lions do it. I imagine Brian Flores is going to do it, with the Miami Dolphins. Granted, we haven't seen him as an actual head coach. The Baltimore Ravens can do this from time to time as well. You just look across the league, man, and a lot of great teams with, those quote-unquote oversized defensive ends. Typically, they play them inside on third downs. You also see a bunch of 3-4 defenses do it as well. Some guys like to keep their units out there, but I know, like last year for the Packers, they would play like 3 outside linebackers, at the same time, and have one of them drop in as a defensive end. Typically, Nick Perry was the guy. You'd see Clay Matthews at times line up inside, and, he's not going to have the leverage or the size to really match up, but using his technique and getting back there quickly could help potentially disrupt plays, especially on those third and longs. So that is one thing that Seattle, whether they started or not, is irrelevant, but it's something today that is very popular and a lot of teams do. Pay attention to some of your favorite teams on third down. A lot of teams on third and longs don't run base defenses, man. They actually will put those defensive ends, slide them in, and have some guys, attacking off the edge. Particularly in 3-4 defenses is where you're going to see it the most frequently. And then, of course, Cliff Averill, your speed rusher. I feel like a lot of different teams have speed rushers. You look at, teams like, I'm trying to think of examples at the top of my head. You look at, like, the Falcons, of course. Vic Beasley is, like, the true definition of a speed rusher. He has all the speed in the world, the finesse move. His moves could be a little bit better. He hasn't really reached that 2015 season. He hasn't really reached that season in a while, but you look at some of the better pass rushers, they implement a swim move, and those speed rushers can really get around the corner as well, or the edge I should say. But yeah, there are plenty of speed rushers out there. I'm just having a hard time thinking as I'm trying to record this, but trust me, there are good examples out there. Look at a guy like Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa implements a swim move. Carlos Dunlap for the Cincinnati Bengals implements a good swim move. But now we're going to get to the linebacking core. So you look at Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. Those have been like the 2 linebackers holding it down, and they're still there. And they've drafted some guys, Ben Burke-Kirven, Shaquem Griffin. They have Barkevious Mingo, who's like a Swiss Army knife, can do a little bit of everything. That's great depth to have as well, but mainly they're going to play Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. A lot of defenses today run a lot of nickel defenses, so they only play 2 linebackers at a time, which to me is the right way to play defense because a lot of offenses are running 3 receiver sets. So you got to have your proper personnel to match that. Having 3 linebackers on the field, I don't really care how fast they are. Not all linebackers can cover, especially a wide receiver. So I would personally like it if you had 5 defensive backs, but let's just pay attention to Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. So if you look at KJ Wright, he is your thumper, a good run defender, savvy in pass coverage as well, but not the greatest athlete in the world. And then you look at Bobby Wagner, he is your elite athlete who is a good coverage guy, very effective against the run, and a good tackler. And a young duo that I can think of right now at the top of my head, you may have heard of them. They play for quote-unquote America's team. Yeah, Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch. So Leighton Vander Esch, of course, would be like the KJ Wright in this scenario where, he's a good tackler, a good run defender, and pretty savvy in coverage. Not the greatest athlete in the world, but he's pretty damn good. And you look at Jalen Smith, who is like the elite athlete, who is a very good run defender, very smart and instinctive in coverage. So that's basically like the next duo. And who calls defensive plays and who works on that staff? Chris Richard, who used to be a part of the Seattle Seahawks defensive staff. So, you know, it's all coming full circle here. And now let's look at the secondary, man. The bread and butter. The reason they got the nickname Legion of Boom. So let's start with the boundary corners for this defense, of course. Your outside corners. The guys that are going to cover the sidelines to the best of their ability. Richard Sherman and Brandon Browner. Both of those guys were like over 6'2". Excelled in press coverage, and a couple of corners that I can think of at the top of my head, one of them being Xavier Rhodes, man. Not the greatest athlete in the world, but neither is Richard Sherman, and neither was Brandon Browner. But what made them so special is their ability to basically take a receiver out of the game plan and excelling in press coverage and using your technique to win at the line of scrimmage. It's very hard for corners to do that in an offensive-friendly league, especially where the rules favor, you know, quarterbacks and wide receivers. But Richard Sherman has been able to do it for years. Now, whether he has been the greatest athlete or the greatest lockdown corner, you know, it's going to be a discussion. A lot of people think he's overrated. That's fine. I get it. I feel that way sometimes too, but you can't deny that other quarterbacks can't throw it to his side of the field, typically because he's doing what he has to do. I mean, if he was getting burnt all the time, you'd see more people testing him. If he were getting beat off the line all the time, you'd see more people testing him. So I think that is a huge nod to how good of a coverage guy he really is. But those physical corners, man, you start to see more and more of them. And a lot of teams love those physical corners now that can play the outside because it helps with their defensive strategy as well. You look at Desmond Trufant. He has, like, pretty good prototypical size. Whether you think he's a good corner or not, I mean, it's really up to you. I think he's pretty good. But Trufant definitely has that size, man, the size that people really look for. You look at Kevin King, who still has a little bit of ways to go in his development, but he's got the size and the physicality, and he excels in press coverage. So kind of a Richard Sherman clone in a way. By the way, Desmond Trufant and Kevin King, both University of Washington products, so very similar corners, along with Sidney Jones, who's like 6'1", not the most physical, but he excels in press coverage as well. And even Marcus Peters, he's more of a zone coverage guy. He has more free safety instincts and cornerback instincts, where he's just trying to make the big play, trying to get the interception. But he can excel in press coverage as well. More of a zone coverage guy. Same thing with Richard Sherman and all these guys that I talked about. And you look at Justin Lane, man. Justin Lane was their slot corner. He was like a little 5'10" guy. You know, didn't even weigh 190 pounds, but he was pretty good at keeping up with those shiftier wide receivers. And you look at a lot of the slot corners in today's game, typically under 6 foot tall, typically not 200 pounds, and they're shifty and quick enough at the line of scrimmage to keep up with these slot receivers. You look at a guy like Bryce Callahan last year for the Chicago Bears, now taking his talents to Denver. You look at Kendall Fuller, who a lot of people seem to be overrating, but he's still good at what he does. You look at Anthony Brown for the Dallas Cowboys. You know what I'm saying? You look at Patrick Robinson when he was last healthy for the Philadelphia Eagles, now with the New Orleans Saints, of course. And you see like a lot of safeties as well who are pretty good in coverage, who may not find a role at the safety position. You see a lot of them playing nickel corner. We see Minkah Fitzpatrick play a little bit of nickel corner. Eventually, you know, he ended up playing free safety, you know, when it was all said and done. But he did play some nickel corner. I thought he was pretty good there. So we do see sometimes that these smaller guys, even though Minkah Fitzpatrick's not the smallest, he's like 5'11", but we see guys who are smaller. And oh yeah, even Chris Harris Jr., who was actually graded out as one of the best slot corners in all of football, which, you know, is a good thing. I think Chris Harris is one of the best corners in football still. He's just getting up there in age, man. I don't know if I could pay him long term, but he's a beast. But if you look at Justin Lane, who was like a 5'10" guy, Those slot corners, man, typically smaller. That's another trend in the NFL that, they kind of started, man. It's those smaller nickel corners keeping up with shifty receivers. And, of course, Earl Thomas. Whatever you can't even turn on a game with a dominant NFC defense without hearing somebody say so-and-so is playing the Earl Thomas role, for this defense. Like, I don't know how many times I've heard that in the last 2 seasons. Probably a ton. Probably, I have to go back and count and take a shot for every time someone said that. But it was a lot, especially with teams like the Falcons, the Cowboys, whoever had a dominant, or not necessarily a dominant defense, but whoever had the personnel that matched that identity. Oh, they said it a ton. So Earl Thomas, of course, is a very rangy free safety, can cover a lot of ground, a great playmaker, absolutely a beast in coverage just all around the board. He can tackle as well in the run game. It's just incredible what he can do. They don't make him like him anymore. Not really a whole lot of safeties out there who play like him, but you do have some good safeties that they talk about. Eddie Jackson last season filled in that Earl Thomas role. Just a great center fielder, covered a lot of ground, a playmaker. He's probably the closest thing other than Kevin Byard to, Earl Thomas that we got. You know what I'm saying? And those guys aren't Earl Thomas, but those are probably the closest things we got, which is crazy. And then you look at Cam Chancellor, who is a physical, in-the-box safety, can play the run very well. You can even play him at linebacker at times as a sub-linebacker in third down scenarios. And who plays like that in real life? Guys like Landon Collins, Jamal Adams, Harrison Smith, Keanu Neal, and just a variety of others, man. These run-supporting safeties has definitely become a trend for the strong safety position, thanks to a guy like Cam Chancellor, who played for the Seattle Seahawks defense back when they were the Legion of Boom. So to me, man, it is hard to dispute the facts here, man. The Legion of Boom defense, whether you like them or not, they were the most influential defense of modern football. I mean, it's a pretty safe argument to make. I just gave you a ton of examples, from Michael Bennett to the linebacker tandem to the secondary in general. I mean, whether or not they started these trends, it's whatever. You can debate that all day, but they definitely made it popular, and they definitely made an emphasis to make these, tactics for playing defense important in the 2019-2020 season. How many times are we going to hear commentators this year refer to this free safety as the Earl Thomas of their defense? He's playing the Earl Thomas role. I mean, insert starting caliber safety here. And then you're going to hear the hard-hitting safety like Jamal Adams or Landon Collins as the Cam Chancellor of your defense. Insert good, free, strong safety here. Like, that's just how it's going to be. And that is because the Seattle Seahawks made it popular to be like that, to have those roles be so emphasized by commentary, to make a point of it. And it's just amazing how their defense was able to be so influential on today's game in a league where everything is so offensive, like offensively gifted and friendly. Like, the rules are pro offense, everything. It is what it is. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed, man. If you disagree or if you agree, leave your thoughts down below. I know for some people, depending on who you ask, it could be a controversial, answer. Because people will be like, oh, well, what about this defense and that defense? Well, I feel like the Seahawks definitely influenced a lot of styles, man, on the defensive side of the ball. So I have to give them their proper due. But anyway, guys, hopefully you guys have enjoyed, and peace.